Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Wall Street Skinny. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And Kristen, I feel like these interviews that we have coming up over the next few weeks, I won't spoil any of them, but today's interview and several others, I feel like are like the Kristen Kelly Legends series, where we have had some unbelievable opportunities to interview people that Kristen has looked up to, admired, followed for years. And today is one of them. So we're going to be interviewing Brian Kelly, not to be confused with your brother, Brian Kelly, whom I think you've mentioned in every single episode of this podcast in one capacity or another.
Yeah.
But Brian Kelly, the points guy. So for all of you who are either thinking about starting or actively in careers in high finance consulting, you name it, so many other businesses as well, points for travel and hotel stays are something that are like obsessed over and gamified by many in the industry. I am a points neophyte. So this is also a great episode for those of you who are either the spouses, parents, or children of points people and want to understand what the heck they're talking about, obsessing about, and like maybe why you get to go on cool vacations occasionally. But first, speaking of points, one of the things that Kristen will always tell me, this is how she like frames every vacation or travel experience, is she'll be like, oh, well, we stayed at this hotel on points. Like, you know, like.
No,
like,
it depends. I don't like, no.
Shut up, because I want to get around this. I want to get back to
you
something.
Say what you were going to say, but I want to push back on something. So yes, say what you were going to say.
Okay. But so whenever Kristen is talking to me about vacations, she's often talking about some of the really cool hotels that she's stayed at on points. And this is so timely because I've started watching The White Lotus season 3, and it was filmed at the Four Seasons Koh Samui where you stayed. Was that also a point stay or no?
No, because Four Seasons, you can't do points. It has to be an amazing hotel. I'm like what you guys were talking about, where it's like, if I'm going somewhere, I'm staying at the best hotel that I can basically find. However, if you can get the Maldives St. Regis, like it's phenomenal, which we did for our honeymoon. But no, we pay for the Four Seasons at these places for.
Okay, but we need to talk White Lotus because Parker Posey's Charlotte accent is truly a thing of beauty. For anyone who's listening to this who knows or loves anyone from North Carolina, if you think that this was not the most accurate portrayal of a wealthy North Carolinian family, I don't know what rock you are living under, but this is 100% my favorite part of the show. Like, it is like sitting in on a sales meeting at any one of the real estate firms that I've ever worked at.
You know what's so funny? I'm a podcast junkie. And so as soon as I watch a show, I need to like listen to people talk about it. So I was listening to the Prestige podcast and they were complaining about their accents. But I think that it's a very specialized accent. And by the way, there is this amazing crossover. Do you know how, I don't know if it's the Lucius Malfoy guy or if it was Parker Posey.
They joked about watching Southern Charm to perfect the accents, which 100%.
Yes, that was where I was going with that. But you already know. It's like the best crossover.
So true.
This is what happens, guys. I'm so sorry. We normally get to talk for like 2 hours every week about industry, and we have not been able to because we're both like heads down, just trying to bang out all the stuff for the course. But that means that you guys have to listen to us talk about TV when we're catching up on the big podcast.
Well,
but
a quick second, we can talk about markets for a second. So, one of the things that's been really interesting is that global bond markets have been selling off. So bonds had their worst day since the fall of the Berlin Wall after Germany announced that they were unlocking massive amounts of spending to bolster European defense. Because basically what Trump has been communicating is like, NATO, you're on your own. Like, we're not going to foot the bill for this anymore. You guys need to figure this out. And it looks like Germany is taking steps towards trying to address that. Meanwhile, you have US bonds selling off. It's funny, right? Because we got a comment on Instagram. Someone was like, I don't understand. I think the 10-year rate's been at like 4.2 for a while. Like, the order of magnitude of the moves that are super meaningful in the market is so small. So in 2 days, the market went from 411 overnight, maybe on 10s, to 430. And like, that's a huge move, even though for most people, it sounds like, what's the difference between 4.1% and 4.3%? Who cares? It's like, no. Everybody cares. That is a huge move. And then simultaneously, JGBs have now been getting hit hard. So
which one's that? Japanese.
Bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at least their central bank is hiking rates. So rates should be selling off there, right? It makes more sense in terms of monetary policy. But there are obviously clearly global asset allocation trades happening where we're not just tracking what's going on with non-farm payrolls and our inflation data necessarily, but we are tracking other global markets as well right now.
Well, and then it's interesting because, again, like the impact of what's happening from the Doge cuts and the effect on the job market. I think I saw something that it's like we have like almost the worst unemployment. I think it was like since COVID, which is not that long ago, but still, was it COVID or was it before COVID?
But here's the thing. Non-farm payrolls is backward looking, right? So Doge hadn't lifted a finger by the time the data was collected for today's non-farm payroll, right? Because you get it, it's last month's.
True, but it's the expectation about what's going to happen. Like if it's that and that's before the Doge cuts, I think that then is obviously foreshadowing even worse data than to come, because people take government jobs because they're stable and you don't typically see a lot of layoffs there. And now you have not only all the layoffs, I mean, there was just like a huge announcement, like Goldman Sachs is going to be laying off, I mean, and they lay off people all the time, but like laying off a lot of VPs and like blah, blah, blah. The private sector is always laying people off. The public sector obviously is not. And so it is actually having an impact. But it's one of these things where it's like, as you think about the drivers of what's going on in the economy, now there are some signs that like we might be heading into a recession, but then yields are going up. And it's like, that's why I'm excited. We do have a potential guest who's coming on who will be able to talk like recession stuff and indicators and all that.
We're going to get a bunch of different people with economics expertise on over the next couple of months, because I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost in these bombastic news headlines is, okay, but how do economics actually work? And on one of the videos we posted this week, it's very funny how you see different reactions on Instagram versus TikTok. On Instagram, people are like, oh, could you share the link for that article, please? Or like, oh, I was watching this happen in the market and I was so fascinated. And on TikTok, people are like, it's Trump, it's Elon, conspiracy, it's entertaining, Martha Stewart. And it's just like, what?
Nancy Pelosi.
I mean, I must have 500 comments on one TikTok video with 500 different conspiracy theories, all in different directions. So I'm like, at least get the mechanics of your conspiracy theory right. Like some of these people are like, see, these people are selling 10-year contracts because Trump wants 10-year rates to go down. I was like, so this is the opposite direction. So just remind me how that fits with your conspiracy theory.
I will say part of that is because we have just such smart, awesome followers on Instagram and on TikTok.
Are you saying our TikTok followers?
No. I'm saying it's not going out to our followers. Like that's the thing with TikTok is it's basically a giant For You page. So you can follow someone and you may never see their content. So you put stuff out on TikTok and it's going to like all the randoms. So we're basically getting the feedback from a whole bunch of random people, some of whom are serious people. Our Instagram community is mostly serious people. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why you're getting the thoughtful, like they want to understand and learn. Cause again, it's a different audience. But we do have, and for our TikTok followers, we love you too. And we know that you guys are awesome. It's just that when we put a video up on TikTok, it's actually probably not reaching you there.
It reaches some randos as well, which is fine.
Lots of randos.
We're glad to have you, but just like follow us so you can learn the proper mechanics to support your conspiracy theory. At least know which way rates are going.
And that was the other thing I think we were talking about is that there is this theory that Trump is trying to like get us into a recession. There is no world where Trump wants a recession. Like his ego can't handle it. He does not want a recession. But I have heard that theory that he's trying to get it in to like devalue the debt and blah, blah, blah. But like,
this is always the theory, right? The theory was that like COVID was launched on America to destabilize the economy. The idea that the leader of a country would shoot themselves in the foot to then try to enact policy. Like it doesn't make any sense. A recession helps no one. I mean, and so I think instead what we're seeing as far as a more realistic conversation is a little bit of a butting heads of, well, here's the economic and academic theory behind making an announcement about tariffs that all else being equal, here's the transmission mechanism, here's how long it should take to turn around production to American companies in this way and shut it off here, and here's how your supply chain needs to, and here's how it should all trickle down. And the negotiating and bravado and bluster of using these tariffs as a tactic that is changing things in real time on a geopolitical scale. The scale of the economic reality of these things looks like geological time frame by comparison of how long it would take those things to flow through versus the whiplash that we're all getting on, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Okay, this is just a negotiation strategy. No, I'm really serious about this. I think that's more what's happening in terms of the chaos that we're seeing in the markets is the friction between those two. Because you've got the economic theory, you've got all the bond nerds like me who's like, well, inflation goes up and the 10-year nominal rate is just inflation plus growth. Well, if growth goes up, like, okay, well, forecast that 10 years down the pipe. Okay, cool. But if somebody changes their mind 3 hours later, are you actually going to trade off that information? So, I think that's making people, sit on their hands a little bit, play it a little bit closer to the vest, not take massive risk, which is, again, that large trade that I was referencing. That's why it's so surprising to see a trade on that order of magnitude, unless it is a hedge. To take that kind of outright macro positioning is ballsy.
Well, actually, one question I had, someone asked this, and I'm actually curious your view, because again, I, as a newbie, I know jack shit about just the fixed income world. Someone did ask, why was this done on the CME and not just over the counter? Or was it over the counter?
I totally agree. So, first of all, it's not like, so a block trade is the over-the-counter version of doing something on the CME. So if you want to execute that kind of size and you go onto the exchange and try to do this in clips, you are going to move the market so much against yourself. When most people trade TY contracts, they're literally going point, click, point, click, point, click.
Wow.
So a block trade is executed with a dealer. And this is literally like how it used to go down. I'd be sitting at my desk and someone would call and they'd be like, I want to do a treasury block trade. And I'd have this giant machine on my desk. It was a machine that looked like this. And it had a little slot in it. And you'd have these freaking paper tickets and you'd have to stip it in with the time, because there had to be an irrefutable record of when this trade happened, because it had to be reported to the CME within a very short time frame in order to be compliant. But so this is as close to an over-the-counter trade in that product as you can get, because one dealer is taking down this whole risk. You're not lifting the stack and moving the market, or rather hitting the stack. But to your point, why someone didn't just say, I want to do this in swaps or swaptions or whatever it is, right? That 100%, that's how I would have done it, because I don't want everyone to see.
No, right. Yeah.
And it's funny because so many people are like, oh, we need to find out who this insider trader is. And by the way, the trade we're referencing, the biggest block trade ever in TY, so 10-year Treasury futures contracts, went through on Wednesday. I want to say it was at like 2 a.m. New York time, in London time. But so when you do that, there's a print, right? I think I screenshotted the CME website. You can see 78,000 TY, and you can't actually know if it was a buy or a sell, but you look at the price action immediately after as the dealer's getting out of that risk. And you're like, well, the market sold off a ton. So unless this guy is just like doubling down on his risk to fool everyone and think he doesn't have the risk, like some dealers working their way out of that risk.
He went to the swaption people to do like the opposite and double the position.
But to your point, to do that in such a visible way where now everyone knows this went through, right? This is not a mystery.
Right.
So why would you do that? Whereas you could have gone out and been like, hey, strategically, I want to work something where we do this in option space, some combination of options, swaps, treasuries themselves. There's endless different ways to express this kind of view. So it is quite surprising to me that it was done in TY futures. I never would have done it that way.
Anyway, well, it's very interesting. This is a plug for our newsletter. Jen put out an awesome newsletter today that followed up on the Instagram video / TikTok video that she put out initially on that crazy trade, kind of walking through how much money this guy made as like the market moved this amount. And then she had a follow-up video that explained the mechanics, but you need to subscribe to the newsletter. So
it's only for our secret society.
Seriously.
Okay, well, we've been chatting for a while. This has been awesome. Brian's episode is short and sweet, so this kind of all evens out. And we'll let you guys get to learning about optimizing your credit card and travel points so you can go enjoy all of the fruits of your labor that you earn during your working hours on your own time.
Awesome. So we are so excited to be joined today by Brian Kelly, the founder of The Points Guy, which for me is actually just really cool because I started following you, I was saying, during the catch up in 2010/11, which I didn't realize was like when you launched The Points Guy, like way back in the day. But I have to say, because of you, I have really kind of honed in on like credit card strategies and like built up lots of points and everything, and ultimately have had amazing vacations and stays all because of you. So thank you for that. But I am very into points. Jen knows like very little, nothing about them. So part of this is obviously educating our audience, and also you can educate Jen as well.
Yes,
but
please.
I do think it is so important for our audience because points are a very valuable currency that people just don't think about, leave on the table. And it's almost like, if you're thinking about optimizing when you get on the job, you have to like max out your 401k, right? You want to start building your investment portfolio. And I feel like you should kind of do the same thing when it comes to points. And so again, this is, I think, just a really great conversation for us to talk, because it combines the sort of financy elements with also just like lifestyle advice for people who are first starting in their career or have been in their career and are not optimizing it. So with that, I would love, Brian, if you could just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll start getting into some of the basics on like points and status and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We have a lot of parallels in our paths. I was actually at Morgan Stanley. I was in the tech recruiting division from '07 to 11. So I joined Morgan Stanley right before the meltdown. I thought, even being in HR, my friends were making six figures, big bonuses. So I was like, yeah, I left the fashion world to go work in finance as an HR professional. And the big thing for me was Morgan Stanley had 4 weeks of paid vacation, which was double what you got in fashion. The benefits were horrible. So, joined Morgan Stanley. The recruiting world was crazy, especially in tech, because my job was to convince all the computer scientists to join Morgan Stanley and not Google, Microsoft,
Yeah.
Apple. Like, it was fierce competition. And basically, I was given a mandate, do whatever it takes. So I had a corporate card and would wine, dine. I would fly 50 students a week for interview days. I ran the intern program. So I was paying for like the 100 student lunches all on my corporate card. And so I quickly learned, we know what happened in '08. The world blew up in finance. I was actually at 757th Avenue the day Lehman Brothers went bust. And I
Me
saw
too. Oh, what floor were you on?
what was I on 16, I think? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you were way
The
up
tech
there.
floor. So I saw the meltdown of the financial crisis. Since I was in HR, I actually had to do all the riffs. So even though I was in recruiting, they'd be like, Brian, we want you to help with the big layoffs. And so it was really soul crushing because I was in the business of hiring people. But because I sat within the HR org for years, every Sunday I would get, a password protected Excel doc of who was on the chopping block.
Oh God.
So I was sort of the Grim Reaper. I'm 6'7". So they would make me stand outside of the conference room, and then I'd have to escort lifelong employees, not only to the elevator, I'd have to ride with them down and watch them leave the turnstile. So
Yeah.
that, years and years of, luckily I never lost my job at Morgan Stanley, and I had an amazing experience, but I just knew that being an HR professional at a bank was like not my calling. So at the same time, I was traveling a ton because my team of 8 recruiters at one point was down to just me, which was amazing because I was a points nut. So during the recession, all the hotel companies were giving crazy promotions. Stay 2 nights, get one free at any Hyatt in the world was one of the cool promotions back then. So I was like raking in the points, and I was frankly broke at this. I was in my 20s in HR during the recession, so there were no bonuses. Every year, my MD would be like, "Come back again next year." Like you not getting laid off is your bonus. And
Yeah.
so I was so fed up with that I finally, my ex at the time was like, you do realize like our lifestyle of traveling first class globally every other weekend for free. He's like, that's pretty special. So I started the Points Guy in 2010 from my cubicle at Morgan Stanley. And I was like, let me just start blogging. A friend had told me that, he's like, trust me, this topic is so rich. No one knows how to use points. He's like, don't do any weird SEO stuff. Just start blogging every single day. And he's like, I guarantee you this will take off. And it did. It was like 6 months in, and it really started. And the New York Times eventually wrote an article about me. And I quit my job at Morgan Stanley. It was like 9 months after my first blog post because I got into affiliate marketing. A friend of mine from college said, you're writing about credit cards all the time. You could get paid $200 per approval. And my audience was Wall Street and consultants. So I joked that I was blogging on a gold mine. I had this really rich audience, high end, good credit, traveling for work, savvy. And I started realizing like when I would anoint a credit card as something to get, I would make a lot of money. And then the New York Times writes about the site, which I didn't realize just how much that would impact my SEO. So all of a sudden the Points Guy articles about the Amex Platinum were outranking Amex. And then the
Wow.
rest is history. I left, and it's just, we've got over 150 employees now. I sold the company in 2012.
You did.
I'm still employed by the Points Guy. I'm still like our chief spokesperson, ran it until 2020, but there's a lot of interest in this credit card and point space, and it's not slowing down.
That is so cool. Well, it's interesting. I feel like there's so many financial gurus online who tell people like, don't use credit cards, like only pay with what you can pay with in cash. And I think that like in general, not spending beyond your means is is good. But I feel like there's so many benefits to using credit cards. So can you talk a little bit about like why people should be using credit cards?
Okay, look, if you're in credit card debt making $25,000 a year, I repeat, do not get a credit card. If you're paying interest on credit cards right now, your number one focus should be paying off those bills. Your score will go up. Do not take out new credit cards. And I have all these commandments in my book, How to Win at Travel. But for your audience, I mean, for people who are smart with their money and can pay off bills, I think that is financial malpractice. So I'll get to the points in a second. What people don't realize is when you pay with a credit card, you have a suite of protections. So say you put your villa in Cabo on a credit card and you show up, the villa's trash, or it doesn't even exist. That happens quite a bit. If you wired money, you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Totally. If you put it on a credit card, it's protected. I had movers recently screw up a bunch of things and they were going to give me $10. So I just disputed the charge and they literally took the charge off completely because they weren't willing to negotiate. Even sometimes for a villa, if you have to pay 2% processing fee, you can usually make that up in points. And just remember, you're getting all these protections and a huge bank behind you should anything go wrong. So perks and protection. Another thing I think your audience would like is just frankly the float. So today when you're earning 5% easily in a money market, why would you depart with your cash sooner? Because when you put it on a credit card, you don't have to pay that purchase for like 45 days. So you're getting protections, you're getting points, and you're getting free float on money that's earning interest elsewhere. So
it is meaningful over a time period of 30 or 45 days. Like
absolutely.
You should pay your credit card bill in full every time it's due, correct? Like, is
absolutely.
there any reason to carry?
There would never be a reason
to carry a balance, but wait to make those payments as long as you conceivably can, and don't keep a ton of money in your checking account.
Unless you are applying for a mortgage. So interestingly, even if you pay your credit cards in full, a lot of times the credit cards will still report your balances at random times throughout the month, which could temporarily inflate your balances. So that's the weird thing about credit. It's very outdated, and I talk a lot about it in the books. It's important for people to understand. Yeah. If you're about to apply for a mortgage, don't get a new credit card and just pay your bills off like every other day, because your number 2 factor of your credit score is your debt to credit utilization. The credit reporting agencies, they don't care when your due date is. They're going to run how much imbalance is on this credit card issuer on that day. So if you're applying for credit, if you're not applying for credit and your score is good, it really makes no difference. Your credit score is going to fluctuate, like not a big deal. But especially during mortgages, you want to be tight, no credit card applications, paying off your balances before they're due. But otherwise, use that free float from the bank. Why not?
Right.
What about closing down credit cards that you aren't using? I feel like that's something that becomes a hot topic.
You generally don't want to close credit cards because average age of accounts. So back to that utilization, what people don't teach you in high school, which you should, is like, the more available credit you have and the less you use, once again, is utilization, your number 2 factor. So if you were to cancel several credit cards with huge credit lines, you would hurt your credit score because you'd have less available credit and higher utilization. And if you had one of those credit cards for 10 years, you would then impact the average age of your accounts. Now, it's not right away. It's not catastrophic. It's not the end of the world to cancel a credit card, but the smart play to keep the relationship in the credit line is just downgrade your card to a no annual fee version. Almost every bank has no annual fee options. So this way, if you're not paying an annual fee, keep the line open, keep the account open, and you're avoiding the fee. It's better than closing down an account.
Well, that actually brings me to another question. So like part of what I want to now talk into is like, how do we build the points? Then ultimately we'll talk about spending them. But from the perspective of like choosing a credit card in the first place, there's all these different types, right? There's the fee type, the no fee, as you mentioned. Then there's cash back, which I know for Jen, she wanted to address just this, viewpoint of like cash is king. Why would I take points where I'm not earning interest. And actually, they're probably getting devalued over time versus getting cash. Airline, hotel, where you get the status, the premium cards like Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve. How do you navigate choosing a credit card / like how many should you actually get? Like, can you get multiple?
Yeah.
And how does
So
that work?
I want to like let everyone, and this is for mostly Americans. We live in the greatest country in the world for credit card rewards, period, full stop. If you talk to any of your friends in any other country, even Canada, the credit card rewards are much less lucrative. So it is a bonanza out there. You can easily get 100,000 point sign up bonuses, thousands of dollars in perks per year. So I want to stress to people, like if you live in the US and have a good credit score, like you have an opportunity, especially if you're married, get into 2-player mode where each of you are getting your own cards a couple a year. That alone can get you free business class, first class flights that can add up. Now, when it comes to getting, okay, so there's 3 main flavors of reward card. So the simplest is cash back, and that is compelling. And you want to be getting 2%. So like Citi Double Cash is basically 2% back. There's a Bank of America card. Sometimes you can get like 2.5% back when you have brokerage accounts, like with Bank of America. It's like 2.6% cash back on everything, which is really rich, really, really rich. And I don't blame people for that because cash is king. You can buy whatever you want. I'll explain why cashback cards have pros and cons. One of the big cons is they generally don't have sign-up bonuses. So you're going to forego at least $1,000 off the bat by getting that. Okay, which depending on how much money you spend, you might say not a big deal. But the second flavor of credit card is co-brand card. So this is when you earn a currency in a single airline or a hotel. The positives of these cards are in the perks. So you're going to get free check bags, which with Delta, you're getting 8 passengers of free bags every single flight, which if you have a family and you're checking 5 bags a couple times a year, for a $95 card, it's a no-brainer times 5 just in the free check bag benefit. And they also have big sign-up bonuses and nowadays with elite status, the airlines and hotels are really making you spend on their credit cards because they keep increasing the threshold. And it's this like hamster wheel where you can't keep spinning fast enough. So you need like an extra boost from the credit card to get that wheel going. I'm also encouraging people to hop off that hamster wheel. I think more and more people, we can talk about why that makes sense. But the real downside is that you're accruing into one single currency and bringing this back into like retirement and 401ks. Like no one listening would want to put your entire retirement on like Tesla stock, right? That could go really good or it could go horrible because it fluctuates so much. You never want to overexpose yourself to one single currency. And this is where I really talk about in my book, like it's 2025. The landscape has shifted dramatically, even from when I started in 2010. So many people have a 2010 strategy where they're like so loyal to one airline. And then they're like, wait a minute, over the years, everyone's become elite. Upgrades have evaporated. The airlines keep upping the game. And then you realize too, like when you want to travel internationally, like the US carriers aren't that great. So there's an opportunity cost to just giving your undying loyalty to a single airline. It still may make sense to be loyal to an airline for status, but you don't actually also have to give away your credit card spend. So you can fly one airline and maintain status, but use your credit card spend on the third type of reward, which is transferable points currency. So the credit card companies have built their own currencies that are so valuable. You can transfer to 20 plus partners. And this is where to get the most value out of your points, you've got to have transferable points. Any points expert worth their weight in gold will tell you Amex membership rewards, Chase Ultimate rewards, Citi, thank you, Capital One Venture, Capital One Miles, and then Built. Built is for people who pay rent, especially. Built's a no-brainer. You earn points on rent, no fees, no processing fees, no annual fee. So if you're listening to this and you pay rent and you're not putting it on a Built
Which
card,
is like everyone in New York.
I'm like, where was this in 2007, 2008, 2009? Like,
I know, right?
Where was
well,
this?
You can even, so I own in a related building, you can actually even now earn on your monthlies, and Built is going to soon, I'm an investor, a founding investor and advisor in Built, and there will be a mortgage component coming soon. So, but bottom line, these transferable points currencies are where it's at. And I'll tell you why. So like let's just say we're going to spend $100,000 on a 2% cashback card, $2,000 cash. Nice. $2,000 ain't getting you to Asia in business class, right? Like, so if you like to travel, especially in the front of the plane, which I'm assuming a lot of your listeners do, this is where those transferable points rewards are incredible. So say you spend 100,000 and I'm going to do this because I booked this week. So $100,000 on a Capital One Venture card, which gives you transferable miles. You earn 2 on every purchase. You're getting 200,000 Capital One miles. I just booked today their first class to Abu Dhabi. Granted, it's 200,000 one way, but it's a $10,000 ticket. So would you rather have $2,000 in cash? Some people would, but I would go out to say people who want to live an aspirational, over-the-top, travel exquisitely would rather have that Etihad 15-hour apartment, they call it, where you get your own room on the plane, showers, caviar, etc. So the return on that 100,000 spent is 10% when you redeem for first class versus 2% when you're getting cash back. So that's like an extreme sort of example. That's 5 cents per point in value. Is pretty difficult to get for most redemptions. If you're redeeming for flights to visit family in Orlando, et cetera, you're generally getting 1.5 cents per point in value. In that case, if you're using a Delta card and getting 1 point, it's much better to get a cashback card for 2% cash back. But if you're a points expert and read my book and learn how to transfer those, because what happens with the bank transferable points, they have transfer bonuses. So recently, Virgin Atlantic had upper class to London tickets for 30,000 points. But there was a transfer bonus from Chase where it was 24,000 points to fly Virgin Atlantic's beautiful business class one way to Europe. I mean, 25,000 points, that would be $250, or flying Virgin. Yeah. And I know families who booked 8 tickets at 30,000. So there are these bonanzas going on in the points world that it's so exciting. But to play in that realm, you have to educate yourself. But it's actually a great time because in 2010, when I started the Points Guy, a lot of this was manual. Like you had to read the Points Guy for like a month or 2 to start getting it. The beauty of 2025 is that there are now automated tools that'll do all the heavy lifting for you.
Oh.
So yeah, so just like Google,
Tell
Google,
me this.
and they're $100 a year. Point.me is one of those tools. And if you have an Amex membership rewards card, like a platinum or gold, it's free. So point.me/Amex. And what this tool, well, when you get one after this podcast, but Point.me, if you say you want to go from New York to Paris on a day, any given day, Point.me will tell you how much it's going to cost in cash. If it's a $5,000 ticket, generally that's 500,000 Amex points if you buy it, but it could be as little as 50,000 by transferring to Air France or one of their partners. So Point.me is now connecting to all the airlines and pulling in all the transfer options. So it does the math for you within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're really lazy, you can even pay Point.me concierges like $200 a ticket, and they'll do it all for you. You'll say, I want to go to Paris and Istanbul and then go to the Maldives. They'll use your miles for the best return. And then it's worth paying, even if it's $250 a ticket, they're saving you thousands. Yeah. So Point.me is one of them. Seats.aero, AERO. This is a really cool tool where it goes deep on a single airline. So say you want to fly JFK to Dubai, first class, and take the shower in the sky. It's only 132,000 Amex points, but you have to be able to find the availability. Right. Seats.aero will actually take a route like JFK to Milan, which Emirates flies, or JFK to Dubai, and in a second, it'll show you the entire year of availability. These are the 44 dates where there's first class availability. So that's how you then plan your trip around where there's the availability. And if there isn't on your certain day, you set alerts so that when Emirates inevitably opens up seats, you're the first to get emailed and bam, you book them before anyone else. So the points game is a little bit complicated, but to the winner goes the spoils. Like for those who care to educate themselves or care to pay the $100 to use one of these tools, it is a feast.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was telling Jen this. This was in 2017. I don't think this could happen again, but we got the thank you. I think it was like the Citi thank you card, and my husband did the 100,000 point sign up, and he got a first class ticket to Hong Kong, retailed for $20,000, and it was like, it was for literally the sign up bonus, which I feel like that's no longer the case.
These deals are still happening. In the book, I open up, like, we're living in the platinum age of travel. Travel today is incredible if you know how to travel. Like, you couldn't pay me to fly back in the golden age of travel. It was way more dangerous. You'd have to connect 10 times on these loud, cranky planes, and it was so expensive. So when everyone's like, oh, they served fine China and economy, but economy was more expensive than international first class is today. So, and today, travel is actually pretty inexpensive and affordable. Like everyday people can get on airplanes. That was not the case back then.
Yeah.
And now you have lie flat beds, you have suites, you have showers. And I warn people, once you start flying Etihad and Emirates, like you will be ruined. So just
Yes.
like beware, if you're comfortable in premium economy, like stay there, because once you start
Yeah.
experiencing the VIP ground transport where they whisk you through immigration, like you will be hooked on that.
Oh God.
So it is a slippery slope.
And one other thing I think is important to recognize too is that like your spending habits matter as well. So like when I was traveling a lot for work, I got like the Chase Sapphire Reserve because I forget the exact amount. It was like 3x on travel. So you're not only like making three times or I forget the exact number. Is it three? I feel like
Yeah,
you
so,
would
so
know.
it's 3x on travel. And that
Yeah.
travel isn't just air and hotel. Chase's travel category currently, it bonuses for tolls,
Okay.
parking, city transit, like any
Yeah.
travel agent, cruises. It's a really broad category. And you bring
Yeah.
up a great point to put together a good credit card strategy. One of my points commandments in the book is like you want to be earning more than 1 point per dollar on every purchase. The Amex Gold Card is 4 points per dollar on dining and groceries. Those are categories everyone listening to this podcast probably spends a ton on.
Yeah.
So you get a huge sign up bonus for getting that Amex Gold. Then you're getting 4x on all your dining and groceries. You're using your Chase card for your Ubers and everything else that are 3x.
Yeah.
By the way, in the book, it's not just credit cards too. Everyone listening, I want you to right now, Uber, if you link your Marriott account to your Uber, you earn free Marriott points forever for the same rides, especially if it's Uber Black. You earn a ton. I take Ubers every single day and I get free Marriott points. Everyone today, just do it. It takes 2 seconds. I think it's uber.marriott.com. You literally just attach your Marriott account once, and forever you'll just get free Marriott points flowing into your account from every Uber ride. There's like no reason not to. So this is where getting the right credit card, your Bilt card gives you 1 point per dollar on rent, which is
Mm-hmm.
most people's biggest expense, up to 100,000 points a year. So it's like, oh, this isn't that complicated. 2 or 3 cards will cover most of what you're spending. If you're spending a ton on Amazon, getting an Amazon card can make sense. The Costco card might make sense if you spend a lot there. But generally, between dining, rent, groceries, there are gas credit cards out there as well. Just look at all the major categories where you spend, and all of a sudden, when you're earning 2, 3, 4, 5x on airfare through the Amex Platinum, like this is where you supercharge it. So you're getting these points, and then you're learning the advanced tactics of maximizing the transfer bonuses. When Amex or Chase, they run every month different promos, like 30% to Air France. Well, all of a sudden that 50,000 business class ticket is like 37,000 miles or whatever. And you got to learn how to strike while the iron's hot. And there's another pot of people listening who are points hoarders. And I want to speak to you directly because this is like an epidemic, especially, I don't know, it's a psychological thing, but like stop hoarding your points because the airlines and hotels are continuing to increase the amount over time. So saving them for an unknown future date is just like an unwise. I liken it to putting your cash into a savings account versus high yield savings, like,
Yeah.
or even the market. I mean,
Under
putting
your
your,
mattress.
don't do that because the value erodes over time and you're leaving it in a non-interest earning account. So,
Mhm.
don't just squander them on gift cards, but like plan trips for those trips where you can start take that money off the table that you would have spent on the airfare, use your points, and then use that money to invest or put it to the things you really care about.
Yeah. Well, so now shifting a little bit to almost like corporate travel. So, two questions here. So, number one, if you're working for a company and you're spending a lot, do those points go to you or do they go to the company? And like, does that vary? Slash, should you get your own like business credit card somehow? Because when I was working at the firm that I left Morgan Stanley and did like corporate training, they actually kept the points. So I ended up, that's why I started looking into like what card should I get and all that and became very obsessed with it because I was traveling all over the world and I wanted to be like, when I'm booking my airfare and stuff, I'd rather be earning the points. So I'm curious if that's the case
Yeah.
everywhere. And then number two, small business owners. So Jen and I have our own business and it's funny because I know exactly what to do for like my personal strategy, but I literally have no idea what I should be doing. So I'm actually curious if you have any advice
Yeah.
for individual business owners, small
Yeah,
business owners.
so when you're working for a company, some companies, it just depends on the policy. So when I was at Morgan Stanley, they really wanted you to use their corporate Amex.
Yeah.
But I was able to call and they were like, oh, it's $95 a year. So most people don't want to do that. But I was spending like 100 grand a week sometimes. I'm like, hell yes, I'll pay the 95. Some companies will have the policy to use their corporate card, but it's kind of like but you can still use your own until
Yeah.
HR really like yells at you. in that case, like use your own credit card and get reimbursed all the time, unless you
Yeah.
feel like your company's not going to reimburse you or if you don't have the credit line to float it. But when possible, put it on your own credit cards and get reimbursed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And as far as small businesses, this is a huge area. So small business credit cards have even bigger sign up bonuses. It's a really lucrative business, but you don't need to have even like an EIN. You can anyone out there, wink wink, can apply for small business credit cards. Even if you have a concept of an Etsy business you want to start or dog walking business you're thinking about, you can apply for these insane small business credit cards with huge sign up bonuses, because it's always good to separate. Even when you're starting a very small business, it's good to separate finances. So
Yes.
small business credit cards are a huge piece of the puzzle for those who know how to get them. You can sign up as a sole proprietor with your social security number. If you've got good credit, this unlocks a huge opportunity. I actually, when I sold the points guy, one of the final deal points, the attorneys were like, really, was that I could get to put the corporate spend on my credit card, because I knew when I sold to this publicly traded company, like, I'm going to break our travel policy. Like, they're never going to let me fly first class. But I'm like, so this is a way where if I just earn the points from all of our spend, then I'm the points guy. And they were like, yeah, totally, whatever. But that ended up being one of the best deal points that I have, because now that the company's spending millions of dollars, we spend a lot. For anyone out there whose small business is spending on social media marketing, Google ads, there are credit cards where you can earn. The Amex Business Gold is 4 points per dollar on internet advertising. And they have other categories that automatically ship. So the Amex Business Gold is one of the best. Chase Inc. is also
That's
3x.
what we have. I was just going to ask you.
It's
That's
like a free
what we
one
have.
though. I feel like, is there like a higher tier, or is there?
Yeah, Chase Inc. Preferred. So
Preferred.
a lot of
We
times
have
this
Business Unlimited.
yeah, so Business Unlimited is usually cash back. So here's the beauty of, if you were to link it to a Chase Inc. Preferred, so you're getting ultimate rewards points that are basically 1 cent per piece in value. If you were to get an Inc. Preferred card, or even if you have a personal Sapphire card and you link the accounts, that unlocks those points from being 1 cent each to being able to transfer them to all of Chase's super valuable transfer partners. So basically, with the business credit card, you want to have transferable points as well. So there's a business platinum card. The Inc. card is sort of the brother to the Chase Sapphire, which is a personal card. Capital One Venture X Business is an awesome card, and it's double points on everything. So that should be your baseline card for all your spend where you're not earning a bonus on like an Amex Business Gold or a Chase Inc. You put everything on that Capital One Venture X Business, 2x earn, and plus that card. You know, so many people say, oh, that's $395. That's too much. But the Capital One Venture X Business is $395, but you get $300 a year in free travel taken off your bill. So it's really a $95 a year card that also gets you into the beautiful Capital One lounges. You know, there's only 4 of them now: Dallas, DC, Denver. I think they just opened up in Las Vegas, and they have one in DCA too, I believe, a mini one. But free access to these beautiful lounges, and double points, and a whole bunch of other perks. So it's like, when you're looking at annual fees on cards, don't be like, my dad always said, cheap is expensive. And it's the same with credit cards. These no annual fee cash back cards are giving you nothing for a sign up bonus, when you could be getting, with that same credit pull, you could be getting $1,000 or more. So even if the annual fee is $100, you're getting 10 years of the annual fee just on the sign up bonus, and years of much richer earning, better perks, etc.
Yeah.
As a small business, is there any downside? I mean, we talked about kind of your credit score as an individual, you wanting to have low utilization and kind of high credit limits, right?
There's a positive to having a small business account, because even though you personally secure a small business credit card, meaning if you default, they're coming after you personally. However, once your credit line for the small business opens, it doesn't sit on your personal credit report. It will sit on your business credit line. And on business credit cards, it really doesn't matter. You can pay the day it's due, because it's not impacting your personal utilization or anything. So, if you know, and a lot of businesses will need to wait till they get invoiced. So there's no penalty for waiting till the last second. So frankly, for small businesses, you really need to think of business credit cards as that great bridge loan till you get paid that invoice, interest free until you pay it. And the points are really valuable as well. And it doesn't impact your personal credit score each month when you have maybe higher balances some month or lower on others.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting because it's really the companies that are kind of getting hit with the fees. And it's like almost like if you think about just the way, if you have a small business and people are paying you with a credit card, it's actually the vendors who are taking the hit. And it's like that's passed through in the price. So if you're using cash, you are basically subsidizing everyone else. Like you're
One
basically,
100%. Yeah. And frankly, a lot of vendors these days, if you're spending a lot, I get it. Small businesses, I'll pay like my contractor, but sometimes if I know a lot of dentists follow me and dentists spend hundreds of thousands on medical supplies a month and you can negotiate like, no, if you want my business, you're taking my credit card, you eat it.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
if not, I'm going to go to someone else who does. Same thing with buying a car. The dealerships will always be like, no, we can only take 2,500. That's our policy. BS, there is no policy. They can take the whole price of the car in a credit card if they really want that deal done. So what
Really? Oh, I didn't know
absolutely.
that. I mean, and
It
not like I'm buying a car
it
today,
comes,
but like,
yeah, but what I recommend to people is you negotiate the very best price. You don't even talk about the credit card. And then once you're about to close it, you say, "Oh, well, here's the deal breaker. I need at least 20,000 on this card. Take it or leave it." And they'll be like, "No, my finance." And you're like, "No, do you want to do the deal? Yes or no?" Because then they'll
Hmm.
take the couple hundred in fees that they takes, but you then get the points. Never talk about it until you've got the great price you're so happy with, and then hit it with them hard. And if they want to make the deal, they'll get it done. Trust me. I know people
Yeah.
have put entire Porsches on their credit card.
Again, this is what killed me when I was living in New York City and I couldn't pay with rent. Like, because it was, I mean, absurd the amount of money you spend in New York City
of
on rent and
course,
the fact that
yeah.
I couldn't do it. It used to make me so angry. All right. So we talked a lot about like airlines and stuff. Is there anything specific with regards to hotels? Like, I was so sad when Marriott bought Starwood back in like, what was it? I don't know, 2018 or something.
No,
And
it's
it
even
was
before. I think it was like 20.
20,
Oh, actually, I think it closed. Yeah, you're right. It closed in like 2018. Yeah.
but they had the most ridiculous, like, you could literally mint those things. Like, if you traveled and you use like their Starwood card, like
I
you
love
were minting.
Starwood. I think
That
Starwood,
was
if
so
you ask,
sad.
Starwood was like the best loyalty program
It was so
ever.
good. It was so good and it was so sad. I now am a Marriott person. I was telling you how we just stayed at the Longboat Key St. Regis, and it was great. Again, stayed on points, fabulous. But do you like any specific hotel chain? And then can we also talk a little bit about status and why you actually are not super pro trying to get the elite status on XYZ airline? Do you have the same feeling about hotels actually?
So hotel wise, if you talk to most points experts, will say Hyatt is like the best value, and
Mm,
you can transfer Bilt and Chase points 1 to 1 to Hyatt. Their top tier hotels, which are sometimes $2,000, max out at like 45,000 points a night. So do the math. Even if it's $1,000 hotel for 40,000 a night, you're getting over 2 cents per point in value pretty
mm,
consistently. So back to like that 2% cash back, but you could be earning 3 Chase points per dollar on all your travel and dining. So think of that, three at 2 cents a piece, you're getting like a 6% return on that type of spend versus only
yeah,
2% return on a very good cashback card. So once
yeah.
again, just doing the math for those people saying, well, that 2% actually, when you're supercharging category bonuses with 2 and 3 cents per point in value, that's where, if you like luxury travel, is a
Mhm.
no-brainer. Marriott's still a good program. Hilton, each of those programs offer fifth night free. So I find the sweet spot for
Yeah.
Marriott and Hilton, if you can find their like standard room awards, fifth night free. But once again, there are tools out there now. One that I love is just it's free called maxmypoint.com. So say you want to stay at the Waldorf Astoria in Cabo, which is like one of the best
Mhm.
Waldorfs and Hyatt or Hilton properties in the world. You can go to maxmypoint.com, put in that property, and it'll show you a monthly calendar of the days that there's availability at the lowest level. And so that's where you kind of hunt for good redemptions. Waldorf Seychelles, I'm looking to go to. It's like $2,000 a night, and it's 100,000 points, with the fifth free. So you can get like crazy value still, but you really have to hunt in those programs. I think overall, like the airlines and hotels are watering down their elite programs. Starwood was known for suite upgrades that you could consistently pretty much get. Now these
Yeah.
programs, you're supposed to get a suite and they'll be selling it on the website, but the hotels play games because the hotels they now need to pay housekeeping to clean a suite versus just your normal room that you booked, and they're not getting reimbursed from Marriott or Hilton that much for the
Mm.
room unless they're at full capacity, which most hotels aren't. So what I'm seeing in a lot of people, like elite status, all these perks like the suite, et cetera, you have to beg, borrow, and steal to get it. Like most hotels are really watering it down, or the free breakfast is like, oh, but only like the croissants on this side of the
Right.
buffet, and it's $20 extra to get an egg. There's definitely cheapening of the program. And so I'm not saying it's not worth it. Certainly, if you're getting free breakfast, you've got a family, Hyatt Globalist is probably the best program. They also waive resort fees, which resort fees can now be $1,000 on a stay. Parking as well, Hyatt waives for their top tier leads. But I don't know. I'm a hotel snob. When I go to the best location, I want the coolest resort with the best amenities. I'm not going to just stay at a big box chain hotel just to get value for my points. So I personally find myself as the points guy, kind of rarely staying in points hotels when I travel.
Oh, interesting. I will say again, at the same St. Regis, it was great. And they gave us $100 because my husband has platinum because he spends so much money on their credit card because he travels a lot for work. But it was like $55 a night to park. So we literally like parked our car at my parents, and my parents would come and shuttle us back and forth because we're like, we're not paying $55.
It's crazy
for parking. Like, this is absurd.
But that brings me to another question, because I feel similarly, right? Like when I travel, I want to go to like the boutique hotels. Like I don't want to stay at a Hilton typically, like, or something that's in a chain, depending on where we're going. But just generally speaking, if flying, like the glamorous flying experience you described, actually doesn't mean anything to me. I've done it. I don't care. I'm fine to fly coach. I don't even do premium economy. My husband insists on it because he's tall like you are. But if flying isn't really your thing and you think you're not going to use the hotel points at the big box things, what else can you maximize your points on for things that might be important to people beyond just flying and hotels?
Yeah, so with Capital One miles, they're really interesting in that any travel expense you can use for basically 1 cent per point. So like if you want to take a Blade to the airport for $250, it's 25,000 Capital One miles. It's not like the best redemption out there, but it's a solid redemption. Or car service or cruises or luxury travel advisors. You can actually just use those Capital One miles to kind of wipe out expensive hotels that are not a part of the big chains. You can use your Capital One miles pretty easily for that. Because when you buy hotels through Amex, for example, Amex gives you 0.7 of a cent per point, which is really bad when you redeem for hotels, which makes no sense to me because hotels have the highest commission and they're earning a commission on you buying that hotel. But for some reason, they kind of penalize people. With the Chase Sapphire Reserve, they'll give you 1.5 cents per point when you redeem for hotels through Chase Travel. The problem sometimes is through those portals, they inflate the rates of the hotel. So are you really getting that value back? Which is why I like to find the cheapest rate. And in this book, I've got hacks for getting really cheap hotel rates. Founders Card is amazing. So everyone out there, it's like $500 a year to get Founders Card, but the hotel discounts are insane. Case in point, I stay at the Peninsula, New York, which is $1,500, $2,000 a night. The Founders Card rate for a suite is $800. In the book, I also talk about there's also organizations you can join, like the American Bar Association. You do not need to be a lawyer. Anyone can join the American Bar Association. You can Google right now, American Bar Association Hotel Program, and they have a PDF of all the luxury Four Seasons and whatever, global cities. And the room rates are literally less than half of what you'll pay.
Okay,
so it's like $100 a year to join the bar association.
Join the bar when we get off this call.
I'm not, but before you join, look at the hotel list and you tell me you can stay like Peak, Holiday, Four Seasons, Chicago. If you have to go there over Memorial Day, it was like $1,200 a night, or it's like $350 through Bar Association. Or if you work for a big bank, you can usually use your bank's discount when staying. By the way, I mean, some hotels might ask you for ID. If you're ever using a discount, you can also be like, well, I'm interviewing at the bank. I don't have an employee ID, So corporate rates, ask your company's travel policy. Usually they don't care if you use it for personal because they actually get discounts based on how much.
Some do due to cost cutting operations. So I will say be very careful with this. Those of you who value your jobs tremendously.
Yeah, you definitely don't.
You check.
But they don't actually, like, they're sort of like two different things. I mean, like, you book through the hotel. The only person who's going to ask you is the person checking you in at the desk. I don't see a single world where it ever gets back to your boss.
But double check your policies. And in most cases, they don't care. I will say if you use a corporate discount for a car rental and you get in an accident and you weren't on corporate business, you might not be covered. So be careful or get coverage. But in general, I mean, luxury hotels, there's a lot of fat. There's a lot of commission. There's a lot to be negotiated on that. And if you're going to pay that full price, never book a luxury hotel through the website. Always go through a luxury travel advisor. For a host of different reasons. You're generally going to get the same price or even less. You have someone to coordinate your whole stay. They can send notes. And a big time travel advisor who has lots of other fancy clients, trust me, if something goes wrong at that property, if you book directly with the hotel, you go and talk to the front desk. They're the final line and you have to beg for whatever you want. If you have a boss travel advisor and you're unhappy, they will rain down on that property, and that property is going to do whatever it takes because that travel advisor gives them tons of business. So it's not just you, you're using the collective power of a travel advisor. So I recommend using Virtuoso travel
That's
advisors.
What we use. Yeah, they're great.
And plus, if you multiple rooms, want to make sure they're connecting, want to know that you're coming early, you just tell your advisor they do everything. And it's for the same price. Unless you're getting some special ultra cheap deal through the website, which almost never happens, always go through an advisor. Give them the commission. And
Yeah, I was going to say two things. So when I was working, like I said, I did corporate training. So I was always using different companies' corporate rates because it ultimately was like getting paid by them. Now, it was because I looked it up on online. I literally Googled what is the Bank of America rate because I was going to do work for Bank of America and it would be significantly cheaper. So I could stay at a better hotel instead of having to go and literally the only hotel that ever asked. And it was literally when I was doing Morgan Stanley training in Hong Kong for their analyst associate program. And I was trying to stay at the W, which was right there. And they were the only ones who gave me pushback. And all they do is they're like, sorry, we're bumping you up to the rack rate. So anyway, I don't see a world where your boss ever or anyone gets you in trouble.
But these corporate rates can be, the Goldman rate at certain hotels, sick hotels, Rosewoods and whatever, it's $300 a night sometimes.
Not that we're saying we're endorsing it if you're not actually working there, but whatever.
No, but if you're working there, it's worth looking into.
Yes, 100%. But actually one other thing that I had heard you talk about, and it was interesting because Jen was saying, why do I need to have these airline points or whatever if I don't really care about flying? I mean, one thing is just for us, we're about to be a family of 6. And so we travel. Even if it was going down to Florida, it's really effing expensive. So sometimes, and again, you don't always get the redemptions, but having the optionality to put some of the airline stuff on points, if you're able to 3x with the Chase Sapphire card, 3x when you're earning it, and then you redeem for 1.5, it's still actually pretty good. And then the other piece, which I had heard you talk about, and I had never thought about it this way, was how if you're using miles, so again, whether it's because you've earned them from traveling or transfer points, whatever, it's not you're booking a ticket. You can't even look at it necessarily buying the ticket outright because it's a fully refundable flight.
Yes, thank you. So you need to change your mindset. Using points, one of the best things that came out of the pandemic was that American, United, Delta, they all allow you to cancel points reservations up until departure free of charge, everything back. So let that sink in. I want people to think about having a stash of airline miles as an insurance policy. This happened to me this week. My United flight, delay. I'm like, oh no, I'm not getting home tonight. What did I do? I immediately used Delta miles and booked the flight into LaGuardia for 3 hours later. Eventually, luckily, my United flight went out and I just clicked one button and got all those miles back. But there was only one first class seat left. So I snagged that first class seat in case I needed it. And then I canceled it when I didn't. If I really needed it, that would have been the difference of me seeing my child that night. So that's why I love having miles, because sometimes technically a lot of airlines will let you cancel within 24 hours, but not same day. So if I would have paid for that ticket, unless I bought refundable, which is then a gambling, because if I actually need it, then all of a sudden I paid last minute refundable, which is not cheap. And to your point, when you redeem for a flight, it's a refundable ticket. So don't base the price off of the basic economy ticket, because you are getting, as Kristen mentioned, a fully refundable ticket. And I'll just say this, if you're ever in Europe and have a family emergency and you need to get back last minute, the airlines actually have tons of award availability last minute at the same time where prices are through the roof. So I just always love the peace of mind knowing that I have so many miles. If anything ever happens, I can either get myself or a family member anywhere in the world instantly for free. When you're in the airport and you're traveling, I always say you got to be on the offensive and you need to be looking out for yourself. The airlines are not going to take care of you. And having this arsenal and the knowledge and the tools to be oh, no. I'm going to get myself home. I'm not going to wait in an hour-long line to talk to an exhausted agent who's going to put me on standby, because that's the de facto. I'm going to know what airline, what the rights are. Hey, there's 2 seats on your partner, Delta Flight 102, leaving in 2 hours. Can you transfer the ticket now? Thank you. When you do that, your chances of getting reaccommodated, when you wait and let the airline completely take care of you, this is when people just get in the same thing. And that's why in my book, I have a whole chapter on when things go wrong, when you show up at the hotel and they're like, we're sold out. Well, first of all, here's the ways to avoid that. Never check in at 11 p.m. without calling the hotel prior and letting them know you're coming. That's happened to me, even as a Titanium lifetime member. But yes, It's a mentality. And when you have points and miles, at least you know you can use them to get yourself somewhere when you really need to be there.
Yeah. A couple of other things. I would love if you can talk a little bit about just like travel tips in general. So like if you have to go indirect, like is there a minimum threshold of time that you should be booking, right? Because sometimes they'll let you have like a 40-minute window on like an international flight. You're like,
Setting up
that doesn't
setting up for disaster. Well, the first thing is where you book. So I, in most cases, do not recommend booking through online travel agencies. So the Expedias of the world. The problem nowadays is if you book your airfare through one of those and you're at the airport, your flight's canceled, the agents now can no longer just click a button and put you on the next flight out. You have to call your online travel agency in most cases, which could be an hour just to get through. I know so many people who are like, wait a minute, they're letting people cancel flights for free, but my travel agency doesn't see that rule because you're adding in unnecessary people in the process. So book direct with the airlines whenever possible. Also, yeah, 2 hour minimum connection time for domestic, 3 hours or longer if international. If you have to switch terminals at Heathrow on a bus,
Oh, Heathrow is every
yeah,
oh
generally never connect in Heathrow when you can avoid it.
I know.
So many people will book a cruise and then have 1 hour and you're going to get canceled. And then you have to give yourself padding. And also, I do recommend for big ticket trips, travel insurance. Your US health coverage will not cover you abroad. Travel insurance,
travel health
travel,
insurance. I thought
yeah.
you meant like protecting the trip.
Well, if you're gonna book a family trip to, Mediterranean cruise and spend 50 grand, and you're taking grandma and grandpa and all these people, or you're interviewing for jobs, like it's 5% or less of the cost of the trip to protect the entire trip should you get a new job. Never purchase it through the cruise or the airline or hotel. That's my tip there. InsureMyTrip.com is sort of the clearinghouse where you can compare and contrast at the lowest rates. And the coverage is really good for weather events. The hotels don't have to refund you. This is what people don't understand. Even the Maui wildfires, people were saying, can you believe the small boutique hotel's not refunding me? I'm like, no, because you should have insured your trip. Like that, small businesses should not be insuring your travel. You should insure your travel. Use the right credit card. And for like domestic trips, your credit card will cover most of the stuff that you would need if you need to cancel. But even then, a lot of people aren't even using the right travel cards with travel protections on them. So at least get a good credit card. But, if you're booking a non-refundable villa and you have a sick family member or someone going on that trip where you really may have to cancel, paying that 5%, which is like a rounding error, just to have that protection and coverage, I think is a no-brainer these days, especially for those big ticket trips where you're spending so much already. Just imagine, just build it into the cost of the trip and have that peace of mind. Should anything happen, you're going to be protected.
Yeah. What are some other just things that we haven't touched on that you think people might be interested in? Because we've talked about a lot, but I'm sure we're missing a ton of things.
Yeah, I think on the perk side of the house, we talk about points, but the perks on your credit cards can be extraordinarily valuable, but you need to understand what they are. I online shop, but being 6'7", often I'll accidentally buy clothes that are final sale, and it's so annoying. But I looked up one day, and Capital One has up to $300 an item. I think up to like $10,000 a year, you can get return coverage. So if an item can't be returned to some shady retailer you bought, so I just got $1,200 back just for returns that I stupidly didn't realize were final.
Wow.
My son also drew on my $1,000 chair that I had just purchased, and I'm getting that refunded due to purchase protection. A lot of airlines, if you're delayed 6 hours or have to spend overnight in the airport, it's $500 or $1,000 per person in coverage. So don't beg for the Motel 6 voucher from the airline. Book yourself in a suite at the airport Westin and then have your credit card reimburse you. Those are the types of things that most people don't even realize they have these benefits. And once you start layering in the earning, the redeeming, and the perks, you're going to be like, wait a minute, I really need to up my game.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. I actually forgot about this. I remember I had bought, I think it was like a new iPhone or something. And this is back before it was like pay over time. So I actually outright spent, $600, $700, $800 on a phone, and then it literally shattered. And I had used my Platinum Amex and they refunded the whole thing, even though it was 2 months later. But like Amex had, I think it was like up to 3 months warranty type thing. So I was able to get the refund. Like there's so many things where people just have no idea. And it's crazy. It's overwhelming though. And I think that that's actually the last thing I want to ask you, which is, if you're sitting there and you're like, I'm so busy, I have so many things going on, like, why should I even look into this? I mean, when it's so overwhelming, what would you tell people if they're listening? They're like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I'm just going to keep using my I'm going to use my debit card.
Yeah, I would just say there's 4 cards in the book that I recommend. Get yourself either Capital One Venture. That's 2x on everything with transferable miles, $95. I think right now it's a 75,000 point sign up bonus, which I personally would value at about $1,500. That could easily get you a one-way business class ticket to Europe. Um, Amex Gold, 4x dining and grocery, Chase Sapphire Reserve, 3x, plus access to the beautiful Chase lounges. The Chase airport lounges, LaGuardia, JFK, there's a bunch of them that are beautiful. No fees for anything like the airline lounges. Amex Platinum is expensive, so you kind of need to make sure that there are the Centurion lounges or that you're flying Delta and can get into those lounges. And get a Bilt card if you're paying rent. Hands down, full stop. Even if your landlord takes check and they're 90 years old, they can still send a check or a direct deposit. So it's like there's like no reason you should not be doing that. There's no one card that's best for everyone, but just get a couple of those cards. And then when it comes time to redeem, like use the tools that I talked about. There's also emails. I love Thrifty Traveler. It's $100 a year. And every single day, they'll email you the best points deal. So it'll be like Qatar Airways, which has Q Suites, which is like the best business class. They'll say, Qatar, from these 7 US cities, has business class available these months of the year, 4 tickets. They make it so easy. So even if you're lazy and busy, sign up for Thrifty Traveler, read the email that comes in every day. They'll even text you when there's like amazing deals, like where it's like Emirates, every day of the year is on sale. There's so many people doing the work for you. It's not 2010 anymore. You don't have to sit there and just become and waste tons and tons of time. I'll just leave it with like, these are a currency that you have the ability to make more valuable. Like a lot of people listening here, you probably have thousands more in value than you realize. Taking a little bit of time to spend in this is worth it, because the minute you start redeeming, and that's like, I want everyone to just redeem, because when you start redeeming for those amazing flights to Italy and you just save $5,000, and then wait a minute, let's like rent a boat that day on Lake Como because we just saved $5,000 on the flights. Like that's when it'll all become worthwhile. You don't need to be.
One last question. Yep. So like speaking of the lazy person, opening the cards is not the challenge. It's more, I think, understanding the matrix that needs to be in your head as you're going through the daily spending for your business or personal consumption of which card is optimized for which particular spend. Do any of the websites that you recommended, does your book or does, Thrifty Traveler, like what I kind of need is like a little, like almost matrix of like, okay, oh, you're buying food, use that. Like I have this thing on the back of my phone with 10 different cards in here. And I know like I'm at Whole Foods, I'm going to use my Amazon card.
Yeah.
I know I'm making a business purchase, I need to use my business card. But now if I'm making one of these different categories of purchases, I need to use this different business card. How do you keep track of all of it as a busy person who maybe isn't thrilled with the idea of living their whole life to gamify points?
Yeah, I mean, look, you could even just put a little sticker on each card and just say gas, groceries, dining, whatever. I mean, or just, those Amex Gold business cards, they will automatically reward you in the highest of whatever you're spending. You don't need to be having 20 cards in your wallet. And to answer your question earlier, I have 28 credit cards. I have an 810 credit score. So you actually, the more credit cards you have, the score goes up as long as you're paying them in full.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
So there are apps, the Points Guy, we have an app that'll actually tell you which credit card to use based on where you're going. There's Kudos is an app that'll also help you track also all the perks and benefits. Award Wallet is a free tool that'll track all your points in almost every program. And they'll also tell you when you're not using that Saks credit from your Platinum card. So there are tools out there that'll like do it all for you and say, hey, spend this quarterly Saks credit before you lose it. At the end of the day, it does take a little bit. Everyone should just understand the couple of credit cards that they use, understand where you're earning, how to make the most out of redeeming, and also just take an afternoon and just understand the perks of the card, and it will pay off. But you don't need to have 20 cards. You can have probably 4 amazing core cards for different categories, and that alone will be doubling or tripling the total amount of points you're earning every year.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I mean, again, I love points. I'm so excited we got to have this conversation. And Jen, we have to go upgrade our business
I literally have a list here of 4 different cards we need to add to our business. And I need to add to my personal credit card retinue. I've got the Points Guy app and all of these other things for tracking. And I've got a whole list of to-dos here. So I'm going to be getting a lot of questions from my husband when we start to see these things.
Can you tell people quickly what your book is called, where they can find it, what's in it, and then also how they can follow you?
Yeah, so my book is called How to Win at Travel, and it is 15 chapters, not just points and miles and how to use that, but also budgeting for travel. If you have a fear of flying, I interviewed Whoopi Goldberg and my friend who was actually in a plane crash
Oh God.
on how they survived and how they've actually overcome fear of flying and all the different therapies and techniques. I've got a whole chapter on jet lag, the science behind it, how to combat it. So
Oh,
I think this
cool.
book is like a perfect primer for anyone who wants to be a better traveler and get into the points game. And I explain it in a way that I hope is very easy to understand. Also, family travel. I have a chapter. There's
Oh,
no better travel, no better information on even when you're pregnant. I talk to board certified OBGYNs, when to take your baby moon, should you have
yeah.
your baby in your lap, in a car seat.
Yeah.
Some airlines won't even let you put a baby in a car seat. So and
Really?
then buying tickets for kids, using miles. So this book is, it's a resource guide.
I'm so
There's,
excited to read this.
yeah,
I'm like 22 weeks pregnant. I'm on these mom boards and people are like, can I travel at 23 weeks? Anyway, but traveling with kids is a whole different animal. And I also heard that you have a 2-year old and a 2-month old and are like traveling all over
yes. Well,
still,
my
which is
2-year-old's been to 16 countries. So, and
wow.
I've certainly had my share of good flights and bad flights, but I will say this, the US is one of the most child unfriendly countries in the world. Traveling internationally,
Mm,
especially in Europe, it is so much more friendly. People,
I agree.
in Portugal, they'll pull you to the front of the immigration line if you've got a small child. There are actually family security lanes that make it easier instead of more stressful. So
yeah,
only travel when you're comfortable. No one will tell you when's the right time. But
it's
with
true.
my kids, like, well, my son, it just starting earlier, it can be exhausting, but like those moments that you have with your kids around the world, I think it makes them more well-rounded kids, and they learn a lot of skills just being adapting to different environments. But so I have a
I
whole
totally
chapter
agree.
on that. So
Love it.
I cannot wait to read this. Thank you so much, Brian. It was wonderful meeting you.
thank you for having me. Safe travels.
You too.